If you were to describe what Shpongle is, what would you say? What is your definition of Shpongle?
I guess, I mean, I like to think of it as genreless because it spans so many genres. Raj and I were talking about easy listening music, which is a category of music you used to see in the racks in the record shop. So maybe Shpongle was difficult listening, but I don't know. I mean, I understand the need for categories, as you say, to describe it to friends and stuff. But I forget who was it that said talking about music is like dancing about architecture.
So you've been traveling around the world. Do you have a favorite place that you like to play outside of the United States?
Probably Japan, I would say. Japan's great because, you know, the technical expertise is really up there. The equipment's really good. The people are really nice. I love the food and the culture. So.
And right now you're working on your 5th studio album. What's the creative process been like between you and Rajaram?
It's been good. It's fun. Raj comes down to my house where my studio is, laden with wine and cheese, and we sort of drink a lot of wine and talk about possibilities for the track. Raj will often have a visual idea in mind. Like one that often springs to mind is there's a lake shimmering in the sky we did, or I think Monster Hit, or one of those tracks we did the sort of walk through a jungle to a waterfall. And so as you approach the waterfall, you get the sort of the sunlight reflecting off the mossy pools, the rock pools, and then you go and you stand under the waterfall, and you have this torrent of sound and just heavy, just a sheer weight of noise on you. Then you walk through the waterfall and find a cave on the other side with the stalagmites and stalactites, with little droplets of water dripping with the echo of a cave reverb. And so it'll come up with something like that. Or for the God Particle, we had the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, the idea of accelerations and particles smashing into each other, and then I try and translate that to sound. Raj sits on the sofa, sort of drawing, falling asleep, occasionally waking up. That sounds great, or that sounds terrible, and then I'll get him in front of the mic, recording often just sort of free-form spoken word. And I know you've interviewed Raj, so I know you know that he's certainly not lacking in words at any point. And so he'll do some talking, or maybe some screaming and squawking, occasionally some vocals that we'll sort of tweak with software and stuff. And we do it pretty much just the two of us, and then if we need someone more virtuoso, then we'll get one of our musicians in, Pete Callard on guitar, or Harry Escott on cello, and we might get Michelle or Harry on to come and do vocals. Otherwise, for the sort of simple stuff, I can play drums, bass, guitar and synths, which sort of covers a basic enough skeleton of a track to do it. But as I say, if we want something much more of a high quality, then we'll get proper musicians in.
Right, and I know that you guys kind of rotate your musicians. How do you find who's playing what? I think your first live performance in America, you had Joe Russo, and I think you found like the violinist maybe like the day before. So it goes. So how do you guys pick the musicians for the live performance?
Joe Russo I met when we did a Younger Brother show, and that was through the Disco Biscuits actually. When we first played, I think, one of the Camp Biscos. And I think Benji and I were probably the only band maybe then just playing off laptops, and realised, you know, in this jam band scene, people just don't really get the electronic, or they didn't then. At the time, they sort of needed to see musicians playing stuff on stage, so we decided to do it as a band. And I think we were looking at Zach from Sound Tribe at first, who couldn't do it. But Benji and I had noticed this great band playing just two people, a duo, which was Russo and his buddy Marco, who just drums and keyboards. And you know, we sort of clocked him as a phenomenal drummer, and asked Brownie if he knew him, and he got in touch, and so we had Russo in. and we met. Once I saw him drum, then we could never do Shpongle live without him. I just think he's the most fantastic musician.
So you've been an advocate in expanding human consciousness through the use of psychedelics. Do you use psychedelics to help influence your music, or is it more of a recreational use?
I don't do it in the studio anymore. I have experimented with things in the studio, but generally it doesn't work because making music is quite a logical process, and it's me that has to work the computer and the synths and stuff. Raj doesn't do that side of it. So, you know, if I'm sort of out of my mind and trying to control the mouse, or, you know, trying to do quite a logical but creative process, I just get too confused and would much rather just lie on the sofa and listen to the reverb on a water droplet for 2 hours instead of making music. So
you mentioned a lot about Serena, your girlfriend, and how she's been an inspiration for you. I think that you've even listed her on the back of a record or so. How does she inspire you, and how does she make you grow as an artist?
Serena is, you know, my soulmate, my muse, and just has an encyclopedic knowledge of music. She really, any song comes on the radio and she sings, she knows all the words, and it'll be stuff that I've never even heard of.
With the social media thing, of course, we mentioned on our Facebook page that we were having an interview with you, and we asked our fans what we should ask you. And one of the questions that came up was, what's in the feather, Simon?
What's in the feather? Just it's my magic feather, like Dumbo the elephant. Yeah, it helps me fly. Serena made the feathers, actually. Okay, this is Simon from Shpongle, and I'm here with Rain Phutureprimitive. We've been touring together. We played, how many dates in the spring? We did, I think, 50, 60 shows or something. We're doing another 30 now, so living on a bus together, we get to know each other pretty well, as you can imagine. 7 people in very close proximity. So I think for my first question, I'm going to ask you, what is the worst smell on the bus?
Let's see here. It's got to be after the tour's been going for a while, and we haven't had a chance to go to the wash yet. And so you walk into the hallway to go to the bunk area. It's all the feet. The last bus we had cubbies for our shoes that you could kind of hide the shoes in, but this time they don't, so you just walk down a hallway of feet smell and socks and shoes all over the hallway to try and, you know, get into your bunk. So that probably takes the cake. Yeah, morning breath, everybody mouth breathing.
So with these shows we've been playing together, Rain goes on first. How do you feel that that Shpongle fans that maybe have not heard your music have been reacting to Phutureprimitive?
I feel like actually it's worked out really well, because your music and mine is similar enough that I think it works really well together. We both, I mean, you more so than I, but definitely we both have psychedelic aspects to our music.
Electronic music's certainly easier to make on your own.
It is, but I feel like making music with a computer already has a strong tendency or possibility to have sort of feel kind of sterile or clinical somehow. And I mean, as a species, we've been hearing things like plucked strings and the human voice and hands on an animal skin. I mean, we're totally tuned into that, and I think that when you incorporate the sounds from the real world, I think it can be it can create a bigger bridge for people to walk across and sort of get into your music and appreciate it and resonate with it, as opposed to something that's completely digital, which I also love, but just I've always loved sort of mixing the two, the best of both worlds.
Imagine when you were 16, and you know, when we were 16, to even get into a studio would be nearly impossible, and you know, you'd have to save and save to buy a drum machine, for example, to get electronic drum sounds. And if you could have gone to yourself as a 16-year-old and said, here you go, here's a full studio that will give you as much capability as any of the bands that you listen to, and more so, I mean, I would never have left my computer, I think. I mean, now I use it for different things and find it hard to tear myself away. But back then I probably would have still used it for the same things.
So about a year ago, you did a documentary. It was a short film with Jason Mong on your evolution as an artist. And you talk about how you took a severance package from your work.
Yeah.
Was that scary for you to leave and pursue this position as a musician that might not have worked out?
Yeah. I mean, I had lots of conversations with friends and my girlfriend at the time. And I mean, in hindsight, obviously, I'm really glad that I did it, but you don't know if it's going to work out, you know, beforehand. And it was, yeah, the whole idea of giving up the security of a day job was a little bit nerve-wracking. And but I'm so glad I did it. I mean, I spent years not knowing how I was going to pay my rent check or where food was coming from, but the trade-off was that I was doing what I love to do, so it didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like it was I felt fortunate to have been encouraged, thankfully, by my friends to do it, because I don't think I would have been able to live with the idea of wondering always what if I hadn't made that decision. So I'm very happy that I went with it, obviously.
The last time I saw you perform was at Sonic Bloom in Colorado, and I was happy to catch your mix with Gary Jules's Mad World. That song is really deep and inflicts a lot of emotion. What's it like performing something of that magnitude live to thousands of people?
Remixing a song that already exists is always, that was my first foray as Phutureprimitive, of doing a remix of an already existing song. And I didn't know that it was going to connect with people as well as it did when I wrote it, but it always gets really big applause when I'm performing. And people like to hear what they're familiar with, and I think that it's a great way to incorporate something people are familiar with without having to do all of the heavy lifting yourself. A lot of songs, I don't know, sometimes I'll write music really fast and sometimes it'll take me a while. And that one came together really fast, and I think there's something to be said for simplicity. I think I've heard that song so much and it meant so much to me that by the time I finally sat down and said, let's see what I can do, it came together in just a few days. And so it's always a highlight for me. It's one of my favorites to play out lately. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it was certainly captivating when I caught it. I loved it. You're welcome. For somebody that is walking maybe in the shoes that you were once in, you know, working a 9 to 5, and they have a much bigger dream. In this economy today, it's challenging just to walk away. So what kind of advice can you give to somebody who's trying to pursue something else?
Gosh, that's really hard. I would say if you think that you love music enough to pursue it, you better really love it, because it can be, I think there's the rare exception of people who make it because they're in the right place at the right time and they're really talented, you know, any number of those things. But I think for the majority of us, you know, it can take a while, and you don't want to spend a couple years doing it only to finally realize, you know, I don't think this is really worth it.
So the last thing that I wanted to say is sparkleberrylane.com encourages everyone to live consciously around the music and world we love, and we sum it up by saying spread the sparkle. So besides putting out incredible music, how do you spread your sparkle?
Keeping my nose to the grindstone and keep doing my best to do what I do, and put music out there for people. I'd say that's probably how I sparkle most.
I love that. Well, that concludes this episode of Sparkle TV. Thank you again for your time. Cut.
Sparkleberry Lane rocks.
Yeah, we'll sample that in for sure.